This episode is brought to you by Snapple. Want to know another Snapple fact? The first hot air balloon passengers were a sheep, a duck, and a rooster. Ridiculous. Check out Snapple.com to find ridiculously flavored Snapple near you.
The Flushing Girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Oh, Mr. Sheffield, a podcast where we talk about The Nanny, the hit sitcom from the 90s starring Fran Drescher that you all know and love. I am Shawn DiPasquale here with
Toria Sheffield.
Womp, womp, womp. And we are here. Womp, womp, womp. Sorry to disappoint you, everybody. We're here with season 2, episode 14, called I've Got a Secret. This one is written by, that's a good question. I should have done this beforehand. It's written by Eric Cohen and it's directed by Lee Chalet Chamel. Our old pal Lee is back in the hot seat. Mm-hmm. And Tori, this was you liked this episode. I thought that this felt very much like what I would describe as filler.
Okay, but I was very enjoyable. It's filler the way that candy is filler, like sure. No complaints. And this is the
Wait
episode.
A minute. What? Candy's not dinner?
Sean and I both have weight problems. If none of you knew that by now.
No, you were right with neither of you.
But just to recenter, this is the episode where Mr. Sheffield brings home a famous celebrity wrapped completely in bandages, who obviously just had plastic surgery, but he refuses to tell Fran who it is. This starts with them watching an old mummy movie where, literally like this, it's a black and white movie. It's with a mummy wrapped in tons and tons of gauze.
Yeah, that movie, by the way, Toria, called The Mummy.
It's the original Mummy.
You're like, they're watching an old mummy movie. Yeah, it's just called The Mummy.
A much faster way of describing what we were watching.
They're watching
The Mummy.
1932 Mummy starring Boris Karloff.
And, the kids are like, this is so lame. This isn't funny, blah, blah, blah. And then no sooner do they say they're not scared by something like this, does the doorbell ring. Niles answers it, and it is a person wrapped completely like a mummy, but they're wearing a trench coat and a hat. So the kids run off. They're terrified. And Mr. Sheffield just casually walks in with this person and says, Niles, will you take our guests' luggage up to their room and escort them, upstairs? So Niles and this mystery person go up the stairs, and Fran's literally like, Mr. Sheffield, are you going to tell me what is going on? And it is revealed that some celebrity who he knows has gotten some work done, and he has agreed to let them sort of hide out during their recovery in his mansion. And he is refusing to tell Fran which celebrity it is, which is eating her alive. And it led to this really funny exchange when they're during this moment where she's like, I can't believe you. You trust me to raise your children. You trust me to mail important documents. And no sooner does she say that, does she realize she did not mail something and she sees on the table in front of her. So she grabs it and stuffs it down her shirt before he can see. And she's like, and you wouldn't trust me with this. And he's like, that's exactly right, Miss Fine. And, leaves her to just sort of stew in this huge secret. And that actually, the scene I'm thinking of comes later, but it will be revealed that he's basically insisting that it's because she's a woman and a gossip. And so he's not going to tell women this news, which we'll get into later. But this leads to this fantastic scene where the next day she goes into Mr. Sheffield's office where Cece is working alone. And at first Cece tries to pretend like she does. And she's like, oh, Nanny, fine. It's just killing you that Maxwell's trusting me with something that he won't trust you with, isn't it? And Fran's like, you don't know who it is either. And she's like, no, he won't tell me. And so then they get into this conversation where, Fran's like, it's because we're women. It's so absurd, these men that aren't trusting us with anything. And Cece's like, it's just enraging. And then Fran's like, did you try the safe? And Cece's like, it's the first place I looked. So then they start just furiously snooping, or Fran's trying to break into the safe with her with her hairpin because Cece wasn't able to open it, it turns out. And then Cece grabs his laptop and starts trying to remember his password. And she's like, oh, don't worry, I do this all the time. And just as she's saying that, she doesn't see that Mr. Sheffield has walked into the room.
Classic. A classic.
Yes.
He's right behind me, isn't he? We just did one of these.
Yes, we did. Yes. And it's very classic where Fran's like, Miss Babcock, Babsy, Cece, like, and she's just not picking up on it. And so then Cece runs off, trying to, basically escape this awkward situation. And Fran, meanwhile, tries to like casually sit on the safe as if she wasn't just picking the lock, which leads to her pretending to be indignant that Mr. Sheffield would ever suspect her of snooping. She stands up and tries to march out of the room, but her skirt has gotten caught in the safe door because she'd actually successfully opened it. She just didn't get to look through it. And when she slammed it shut, it caught her skirt. So she saunters out of the room while dragging the safe behind her, which is just a great beat of physical comedy. And I laughed. I enjoyed it. And we find out this next scene doesn't seem relevant or important, but it ends up playing a big role in this episode. Basically, like Brighton comes in and he has a parrot, and they're like, Brighton, why do you have that? And he's like, oh, like one of my friends at school had to give it away because it's a talking parrot, and it's been like it's been telling everybody that Martin loves Loopy or something like that. And they're like, why is that a problem? And he's like, Martin's my friend's dad and Loopy's the maid. so it just seems like a funny little beat. And like, he takes the parrot upstairs and you're kind of like, okay, whatever. But this is the scene I was talking about earlier, which it actually dovetails with a whole conversation you and I had on this podcast a while back. Because basically Fran then goes into the kitchen and she's bemoaning to Niles, like, oh, I can't believe Mr. Sheffield wouldn't tell us this. This is so, this is just so enraging. And Niles kind of seems very tight-lipped. And he says something to the effect of like, well, I don't even really care. And then she looks at him and she's like, he told you, didn't he? Like, and you can tell instantly that he does. And she's like, it's so unfair, Niles. Like, why would Mr. Sheffield tell you and not me? Mr. Sheffield saunters in, he like catches the tail end of this, and he's like, because you women can't keep your mouth shut, not like us men. And I was like, ooh, like I maybe also that's why I like this episode, because this is like a subject that is interesting to me. Like, are there gender divides? Do men gossip? And basically, he says that, and then Niles is like, quite right, sir. I didn't care at all when I heard that, like, so-and-so had put his maid up in Trump Tower, or had a girlfriend that he put up in Trump Tower. And then Mr. Sheffield's like, but did you hear? He had the whole thing redone in leather. And they're like, oh! And so it's just so clear that they actually gossip constantly. Yeah. And that Mr. Sheffield is often gossiping at the steam room at the club. And so I was going to ask, though, last time we talked about this, we said, I love gossip. I love talking about other people's business. You don't care. But do you think that in general, though, men do this behind closed doors?
I mean, like, not really. I really don't. I like men definitely will talk about interesting, I guess, topics, if that's like but again, I still think that like ultimately it doesn't go as far, because I don't, like, me personally, I'm like, no, I didn't hear it. I don't really care. Like, I don't care. I care about people I know. Like, like if someone calls to say like, oh, did you hear what happened to this person? Or like, this person's like going through a divorce. Like, I care, but I care more on an emotional level of like, oh, my friend is getting divorced. I would like to know that, Mm-hmm. Very rarely do I care about any kind of celebrity gossip at all, unless it's like crimes being committed.
Yes.
Like if someone does something like murderous, and I'm like, ooh.
Yes. You weren't like above being interested in OJ.
No, I was very interested. Or even more contemporary, I wasn't above reading every article that came out about oh crap, what was that actor who was like drinking women's blood? Who was that guy?
Army Hammer.
Army Hammer. Like, that fascinated me. And I went deep on that one. I was like looking up every story. I was checking his Instagram posts. I was way into that one. I thought that was fascinating.
That was such a bummer. I liked him so much. What a bummer.
It was just such a public meltdown, you know, like that kind of stuff I think interests me, I guess, you know. But like, I didn't call any of my guy friends to talk about it. I talked about it with like Elizabeth. You know, I was like, dude,
I was on text chains about that. Like, see, I'm not even kidding. I think
that's the difference. Is like, if I'm talking with my two guy friends, almost never will that kind of stuff come up in a gossipy way. We'll make jokes because we're all online, so we all see stuff going on. So like, I remember when the Army Hammer stuff went down, I didn't share any of like the gossipy stuff, but like, me and my guy friends definitely for like 2 weeks, anytime anything came up relating to like murder or death, we'd be like, oh, like Army Hammer, you know, like jokes get made, certainly.
Yeah, no, I'm literally my most utilized text thread with my girlfriends from high school. It's literally called Harry and Meghan. Because that's mostly the baseline of what we'll talk about.
Oh my God, I could care less about them.
Well, Shawn, I'm gonna just wait till I come visit your pool because you're gonna get an earful.
Just add me to that text chain.
You're gonna want to kill yourself. You're gonna drown yourself in that pool.
I'll
the more that I come
visit.
No, I mean when I come chatting about my celeb got hot takes.
It's funny you think that I would kill myself and not just drown you in the pool.
Because you're not a monster.
What happened to Toria? She can't swim. I don't know. Yeah, I'm certainly no Army Hammer. I'll tell you that. Hi-yo.
Hey, let's do a funny gag where one of us pretends to drown the other when I come visit. Okay. We're doing that thing where we have so much time, we're just wasting it away. We're pissing all our time away. Okay. Where were we? So Mr. Sheffield makes this very sexist statement, and then it's revealed that he's clearly very gossipy. And then this leads to yet another big set piece of physical comedy, which I think this episode has a lot of. When it's probably the best one. So Fran she's forbidden to go into the guest room. She's straight up been told not to go in there. But she comes in and she goes, "Oh, are you calling me?" And this woman's clearly asleep, like the woman who's completely wrapped up in bandages. And so Fran, goes in under the pretense that she thought she had been called. And then she makes sure that the woman is like fast asleep. And then starts doing this like survey of her body in an effort to sort of do a process of elimination. So she's like, too small to be Candace Bergman. And then she looks at her chest and she's like, we can rule out Dolly Parton. And then I think she tries to get a look at her teeth, at which point the woman who we've been told is drinking everything through a straw because of her surgery starts sucking on Fran's finger. And then there was that really racy joke where Fran where she goes, she doesn't even say if you're this good at sucking, but like the lady is like sucking on her finger and she goes, why did you even need the plastic surgery? Yeah, like why were you even worried about your looks at all? Like you don't need your looks, which was a BJ reference, but which was pretty BJ Novak? Yeah, it was a BJ Novak reference, and very, very ahead of its time.
Yeah, very prescient.
But so this whole thing is happening, and it's like, and Gracie's supposed to be standing guard. In fact, Gracie comes in at one point when this is all happening, and she's like, "Fran, like, did you figure out who it is yet?" And Fran's like, "Gracie, like, what did I tell you about snooping?" And then Gracie goes, "Always have a lookout." And Fran's like, "Right, go watch out for your father." But so Gracie ends up, not doing a good job, and Mr. Sheffield finds Fran, and he literally like yanks her out of the room. And have you noticed their dynamic is getting much more kind of like physical in its if one of them is mad at the other, they will like yank the other person. And then the show is leaning into that more.
I actually wrote down the note that they're getting more like Lucy and Ricky. And I did that I did that literally maybe 7 seconds before the next scene starts with Maxwell going, "Miss Fine, you've got a lot of splaining to do."
You got a lot of splaining to do.
And just embodied Ricardo. And I was like, oh, okay, so they know.
Yes. And I will say this, like, it does not, even when he's literally physically yanking this woman around the house, for some reason it doesn't feel abusive or like it's crossing a line. Even though, like, obviously in real life that would be very unprofessional. But so he finds her and he's basically like, he's livid and he's like, this better not. Oh, and sorry, they're now arguing in the hallway.
Right.
And she's like, well, I wouldn't have to snoop if you would just tell me who is in there. And then we see that the woman who had been asleep in bed and is completely wrapped in bandages has actually woken up and come out into the hallway. And she just looks at both of them and she goes, "Cher." And it's, sure enough, you can tell from the voice, you're like, okay, that is, supposed to be Cher of Sonny and Cher. But Fran just looks at her and goes, "Exactly. That's what I'm telling him. He should share. He should share." And there's this very like who's on first gag.
Yeah, where she keeps saying share, and then Fran's like, "I hear you."
yes. But it's very clearly Cher.
And then she goes Grammy, Emmy, Oscar, and Fran goes Rita Moreno, which is funny because we have already met Rita Moreno on this show, and she plays a gym teacher. I believe Maggie's gym teacher, right?
Mm-hmm. In the episode, the gym teacher, yeah. Yep. And so at this point, I was like, "Oh my God, is that really Cher?" Because this person sounded exactly like her. I'll get to this more in trivia later, but it's not Cher. It is a Cher impersonator, but in the world of the show, it's Cher. And Fran finally.
What a shock! Cher didn't want to do a cameo where they were just making fun of her plastic surgeries.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like that if you're really good humored about, if you're able to make fun of yourself, it's like the perfect cameo.
What a shock! Cher's not good humor.
You're just being salty. Nothing Cher does will satisfy you.
It's very true.
But, hey, she was absolutely fantastic in Moonstruck.
And Beaches.
Beaches? She wasn't in Beaches.
Who was in Beaches?
That's
Bette Midler?
What's her name? Bette Midler.
And who else?
A woman whose name I don't know, but she's not a diva.
Oh,
she's not a diva.
I thought it was two famous ladies in Beaches. It was like Bette Midler and like another cool lady.
It's a lady who's much less famous, and it's not the other lady's not a singer.
Oh.
God,
Barbara Hershey, that's who it is. Wow.
What a tragic movie.
I saw it one time and it stayed with me forever.
Honestly, it is a very sad movie.
It's so fucking sad. Anyway, but that's for our Beaches podcast.
Bitches Talking Beaches with Shawn and Toria. But so then Mr. Sheffield, we cut to the next scene and he's just like, "This better not get out. Like, now that you know who it is upstairs, like, I swear to God, this cannot get out." And she's like, "Who would I even tell?" No sooner does she say that, does Val saunter in. And she also says right before that, she's like, "Oh, but you know who would just absolutely die? My cousin Ira. He's the best Cher impersonator in Queens." And then she says, "Oh, why, she's famous and he's just a butcher." Like, life really isn't fair. But so then Val shows up and, Fran's trying to keep the secret. She's trying to keep the secret. And of course it slips out. That secret is blown. And we then cut to the next scene, which is the house is just surrounded by paparazzi. Like, Niles can't even get himself inside because there's so much paparazzi. So clearly, so many paps. Those paps.
It's real paps. It's a real pap smear.
Yeah, those paps have smeared
themselves all over the building.
Classic pap joke. But so it's clear it's like the next day, and so clearly this news has gone now. Like, the cover is blown, and
the implication obviously is that Val blabbed.
Oh yeah. And so that's when Mr. Sheffield screams up the stairs, "Miss Fine, you've got some splaining to do," which is that Lucy and Ricky line. And he basically hauls Fran and Val into his office. And while they're waiting for him to come in, they're kind of they're talking about how this feels like back when they were in high school and they used to get in trouble. And Val's like, I swear I didn't tell anyone, just my priest. And Fran goes, that Yenta? So it's clear that Val's priest is like known to be a gossip.
Yes.
Who tells secrets. But so, you know, Mr. Sheffield.
She goes, well, was he wearing his collar? And Val goes, no.
Yeah. And she goes, you know, that's basically their fingers crossed behind their back when they're not wearing their collar. And so they get in trouble. But Fran, you know, she takes the real blame. She's like, no, Mr. Sheffield, this is my fault. Blame me. And she's like, but basically, I'm going to come up with a plan to make this better. Which is like leads to the big resolution of this episode, which is we find out that she has called her cousin Ira the best Cher impersonator in Queens, and she's like basically she's had Mr. Sheffield arrange a sort of like Cher meet and greet in their foyer where Cher is going to share, quote unquote, but really her cousin Ira is going to come down the stairs, sing a little song, you know, allow them to get some photo ops. And that will allow the real Cher to sneak out the back.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, ooh, this is going to be great. Like, I wonder what, you know, her cousin Ira's Cher impersonation is going to be like. I, for some reason, was thinking it was going to be really good. But it turns out the gag is he looks and nothing like Cher. He's like a 300-pound man wearing a wig, doesn't even like, just like, clumsy, and he's lip syncing down the stairs, giving it his all. And for me, I laughed out loud when we cut to Fran, and she's clearly completely taken in by it and thinks that he's so talented. Yes. That's what made me laugh really hard about this whole dynamic.
She's convinced. She's like, he's great.
Yes. She's like, you know, singing along. And the press looks bewildered, and you think it's going to be a huge disaster. But then we cut to the next scene, which is just, you know, Mr. Sheffield and Fran in the kitchen. And, you know, he's basically like, well, you know, even though the press were bewildered, they clearly kind of enjoyed this spectacle. And it did enable the actual Cher to sneak out the back. So the plan worked regardless.
Yes.
And so they're all kind of like, all is well that ends well. And then he says to her, like, and Miss Fine, like, I hope you've learned your lesson about like the dangers of idle female gossip. And no sooner does he say that, does this sort of like wealthy, very like, you know, 90s era Donald Trump like guy walk in, and Mr. Sheffield's like, oh, like, you know, like, Jacob, what are you doing here? And he's like, I'm here to pick up my son's bird. So it's clearly like, you know, the father of the guy who was having that affair.
Raymond Turnboat, the worst name on the show yet.
That was his name, Raymond. Okay, Raymond Turnboat.
Turnboat.
He's like, Raymond.
Which sounds like the writers were like, we need a last name. And someone was like, Turn. And then someone was like, Boat. And they were like, let's just call him Turnboat.
Yeah, it was like how Robin Williams decided to become Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yes, exactly.
But so he's like, you know, here to pick up the bird. And then the guy, Raymond, goes, oh, and Maxwell, I hope that the press wasn't too big a disturbance. And Mr. Sheffield's like, press? Like, how did you know about that? And Raymond's like, I tipped them off. And Mr. Sheffield's like, oh, you told, like, you promised you wouldn't tell anyone. And then he goes, oh, and you promised you'd never tell anyone about my maid in Trump Tower. And then so it's clear that they've all been gossiping in the steam room, and this had nothing to do with, quote, idle female gossip, and everything to do with idle male gossip.
Yeah.
And, you know, so that leads to like the great little like sort of free stream of the episode, which is the man walks out, and Mr. Sheffield kind of like looks at Fran and like kind of shrugs and is like, oh, haha, like what a funny thing to have happened. And he's about to like escape out the room. And then she grabs him by the back of the coat, and there's just a freeze frame on that, which I thought was like it was a funny and enjoyable episode. But I also really did like the sort of like, oh no, like this guy was being so sexist and holding on to such a ridiculous stereotype, and he was the one actually perpetuating all of this. Like I just enjoyed it.
I did like the button at the end. I liked that it didn't. I liked that the show didn't just end with like, wow, I guess, you know, chicks are gossipy at the end. And that they kind of turned the tables on Maxwell's sexism a little bit, and he sort of hoisted himself on his own petard, if you will. Yeah, and then I really like the button, because in that last scene she mentioned something about like, I thought Ira was great, but like, boy, he's gonna have a tough time getting a cab on the way home. And then like the credit scene of this episode is just Ira still dressed as Cher on a street trying desperately to flag a cab down, which I thought was really funny.
It was funny. It's like nowadays I think would be considered transphobic, but still did make me laugh, only because he's a very husky man running in heels.
Yes.
So.
I had the transphobic thought a couple times in this episode, but then I kept circling back to Matt's nanny video about, how this impacted gay culture. And I was like, you know what? From that perspective of normalization, this was an episode where they very much just tried to normalize the idea of like, yeah, sometimes men dress up as women and do impersonations, and that's what it is, And I mean,
Fran's beloved cousin, like it wasn't like an oddity. She was so proud that he's the best Cher impersonator in Queens.
Yeah.
No, it definitely did that. It again, that was one of my favorite laugh out loud beats, is when he's just clumsily like sneaking his way down the stairs in high heels, and just Fran's delight.
Singing
like,
Bang Bang.
yes. So that was the episode. Should we move on to segments?
We should do some segments.
Segments.
And now, segments.
So, segments.
Yeah, no, I think we should move on to segments.
We can move on to our segments.
And now, segments.
Segments with Shawn and Toria. Okay, so for favorite lines and moments, I really liked this moment at the very beginning when they've just got a pizza delivered. And Fran goes, "Oh, pizza's so fattening. I'm just eating one slice." And then she just stacks 2 slices on top of each other. And Maggie's like, "Fran, that's 2 slices." And then she goes, "Oh, not when you eat it like this. The body doesn't know." Like, said so earnestly, and like it was like true advice.
Yeah. I like that. I also liked, it's also at the beginning, Brighton is like complaining that the movie's not scary. And then Fran pops up behind him and like goes like, "Boo," and like scares the crap out of the kids. But then the line after that is Fran goes, "Ugh, I used to love doing that to Ma. Thank God for plastic slip covers."
Yeah, it's so gross.
It's so gross. It's
so
like,
gross.
I was like, oh, gross.
Agreed. I really like this line when Cece called Mr. Sheffield a tight-lipped little scone head.
Yes.
Because she not to his face, but when she reveals when Fran and her are sort of lamenting that he won't share this secret with them, she's like, "No, he won't tell me, that tight-lipped little scone head." And just calling a British person a scone
head is so funny.
Made me laugh.
I also like the line where Maxwell says to Fran, "Before you came into my life, I never had the need for an emergency transvestite,"
yes,
which I thought was really funny.
That was a very, very funny line. And then there was this line that it had nothing to do with anything in the episode. It was a Brighton line, and it was just delivered so well. Basically, Brighton is in the kitchen talking to his new parrot, and he's going like, "Maggie stuffs her bra, Maggie stuffs her bra," because he's trying to get the parrot to repeat it. And then Niles is like preparing dinner, and I think he's preparing like like a Cornish game hen or something. And then Niles goes, "Master Brighton, stop torturing that bird. It's very cruel." And then Brighton just goes, "Yeah, I think he's having a better day than that hen you've got your fist in." which is like, I was not expecting it. And like, he is very good at his deliveries. And then the kind of little follow-up to that joke, which also made me laugh, is, so, Brighton goes upstairs, and then Niles like looks to his left and looks to his right. And then he walks over to the parrot and goes, "All right, let's pick up where we left off. Miss Babcock is embezzling. Miss Babcock is embezzling." So I just enjoyed that scene.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I had those were like my two standout. Like the emergency transvestite, I thought was really funny, and the peeing joke, the mom's loose bladder joke was really good.
Can you hear my chewing?
Did we get? Yeah, always. Did we? Did we?
Get any Yiddish?
Yiddish? Because I caught one Yiddish word, but I feel like it's maybe a word we've already covered.
We have two this episode that I clocked, and we covered them both. We got plots.
Yep.
Because the parrot reveals that Fran had told Val the secret because after Fran denies telling anyone, the parrot goes, "Val, it's Cher. Could you plot?" And then Fran, also calls Val's priest a Yenta. Which we covered, Yenta being an actual name, like a name of a woman, it's like the name like Sarah or Beth,
right?
But it grew to mean a gossipy woman. And
thank you, patriarchy.
Yep. Though, hey, I love a good Karen joke.
Same, so do I.
And then the nanny trivia just ties into who actually played Cher in this episode. It was a woman named Heidi Thompson, and she is hailed as like basically the world's premier Cher impersonator. Her home base is in Las Vegas, and she is incredible. Like
she's really good.
Yeah, look up Heidi Thompson. Like you kind of have to do a double take where the way everything about her body language, the way she holds her face, the way she talks, it's Cher. And then if you go to her website, there's just these like quotes. It's almost like Yelp reviews, but it's like but it's quotes that they have. And one is "You never break character. You're fabulous" by Rich Little. Sunny. Let's see. Frank Moreno, star of La Cage at the Riviera Hotel, Las Vegas, says, "Honey, all the drag queens study you."
Amazing.
Fran Drescher endorses her. Cher's
I would hope so.
Yeah. Cher's godmother says, "If my goddaughter saw you, she'd be so flattered." And then the president of TV Land just said Heidi Thompson is the best Cher. And she also does this fun thing in her show, which just sounded really funny. She apparently every night brings up an unsuspecting male member of the audience, puts a sunny wig on him, and makes him sing "I've Got You, Babe" with her. Okay, so then for the Fran or the Cece, I wrote, we've already discussed that I'm a gossip and a snoop. You're not. So I would be the Fran. I'd be the Fran and the Cece. I'd be the Fran, the Cece, and the Mr. Sheffield.
You're both.
I'm all three.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who I am this week. I'm nobody.
Shawn, if
I'm Niles.
I'm a no, but he was happy. Like if you told me like, oh, I just found out that the celebrity just got this really big procedure done, but I can't tell you, like that would eat me alive.
If I had a celebrity recovering from plastic surgery in my house and I refused to tell you who it was, that would bother you? Like you would have to know.
Are you kidding? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Like not kidding. It would absolutely.
But then let me ask you this. If I told you, would you then go tell other people? You would tell Monica. I know you would.
Yeah, I would tell. Definitely. Yes. Yeah. I on the record, I would tell other people. But like but like I would never like post it on social media or anything. I would tell a select group of friends who I'm sure might also tell
a select group of friends who would tell a select group of friends, and one of those people would post it on social media, which is why you're not in the vault, Toria.
No, I can be in the vault though. I can be if I I'm now trying to backtrack because now I think there's a secret that you might tell me if you
listen. You got more leaks than a pirate ship. I don't know.
No,
what to tell you.
I take it all back. Tell me all the good secrets.
You got more leaks than a men's room at a halftime. I don't know.
What else has leaks?
That's what I was in my head. I was like, you got more leaks than a potato soup. Does that work?
Oh, that's great. Good one.
Thank you.
I was going dark. I was more leaks than because I was like, is Chernobyl really a leak?
You get more leaks than an oil company.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now that we've done all of our jokes,
just call me BP because I'm gonna leak that. All right. So, guys, this was a great episode. We rambled so much because we had extra time today.
And if you want to find the show on social media and tell us your thoughts on Trump's rise or Cher impersonators that you think might be better than Heidi Thompson, Toria, where can people find us online?
Go to at Mr. Chefcast and Chef with two. What is it?
Oh, Mr. Chef Pod. Boy, am I sorry I let you do this. Go to Mr. Chef Pod on Twitter and Instagram. That's Mr. Chef Pod. Chef is spelled with 2 F's, like Sheffield.
Mr. Chef movie.
Go
Mr. Chef show.
You sound like my mom trying to recite back to me the name of my podcast.
Yeah, the Mr. Chef show starring Shawn and Toria. No, I just had a temporary. Listen, guys, if you are on our social media, you know that I can't even get Shawn on it. So don't point fingers at me. I'm writing that.
I'm there. I respond to people. I lurk. I responded to some lady who had a really great Robin Hood Men in Tights reference as her username. Yeah, it
was great. Hey Blinken.
Which I was like, man, that is such a very specific
And
poll.
then I was like, or annoyed is much too strong a word, that you said you liked it and made it clear it was from you, because I wanted to also show that I thought it was really, really great too. And that now they're going to think I didn't get that really hilarious Men in Tights reference.
All right, well, let it be known, Toria also understood the reference.
And love that movie, and I'm in on it too. I'm part of it. I'm also part of it, guys.
We're all part of it. You guys are all part of it.
Shawn was trying to exclude me, so... but anyway, you guys, we love that you listen. We're having so much fun, and we are so happy that you're having fun with it. And we will see you next week.
Yes, for episode 14. Oh no, wait, that's his episode for episode 15.
Episode 15.
Really running a tight ship here. All right, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
The Flushing Girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
I go, Miss Fine.